the District of Columbia, the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital on this April 22nd, planting this tree symbolically to start Earth Day 2020. Hi, this is Ronald Mason, President of the University of the District of Columbia, the public institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital. There is a verse in the Old Testament that goes something like this: And God created the heaven and the earth and all its parts. The point is that we are one creation. There is no difference between nature and human beings and nature. Saying that we want to keep our land, water, and air unpolluted and clean is the same as saying we want to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and provide shelter to the homeless. In the words of Martin Luther King, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere because we are all one creation. So let us remember as we go forward on this day that the earth is our mother and she is perfectly equipped to take care of her children. The only question is whether her children are properly taking care of her. Earth Day 2020 begins right now. Hi, this is Ronald Mason, President of the University of the District of Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and welcome everybody to UDC DOE Virtual Earth Day event. We are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Earth Day with you. I'm Kamran Zendedel, the Acting Director of the Center for Sustainable Development and Resilience in UDC Causes, College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences. I would like to thank you for joining us and thank our UDC team, student, as well as DOE colleagues to enable us to have this event. A few quick housekeeping notes for all of our participants and panelists. Please be sure you stay muted throughout the event to make it easier for us to hear the program and the speakers. If you have questions for the panelists, we will answer your questions at the end of our discussion around 11:15 to 11:30. You can enter your question into the chat box, or if you are following us through UDC Facebook Live, you can enter your question to the comment part. Let me quickly share today's schedule with you. After this my short talk, we will have UDC student poster contest. Then after that, we quickly announce the poster contest winner. Then we will have a short video about UDC Urban Food Hub. Then we will have our expert panel discussion, which I will introduce the panelists around 10:15, and then finally closing remarks by Director of DOE, Mr. Tommy Wells, around 11:35 or 11:40. So one more time, welcome to UDC DOE Earth Day event. Thank you. Now we will have the student poster contest.
Hi, I am Patricia McLean, an undergraduate student in the UDC's College of School of Business and Public Administration. I worked with Shanice Rose on this project. We participated in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled The World's Ecological Footprints. This is a project that we are doing with Dr. Peter May to inform persons about the impacts of our ecological footprints and to encourage how to minimize them to save the environment.
The push for a greener planet must start now. As the overall human population continues to grow and grow, our planet seems to become smaller and smaller. The more fossil fuels and the more pollution going into our environment must stop. We need to make a stand, and we need to promote a greener and safer planet for each and every one of us. That is the only way we are able to make it.
I'm Asafa Tadesse, an undergraduate student of UDC from the Department of Civil Engineering of SEAS. In this project, I worked with Mr. Pablo Sanchez, Mero Nergesa, Kalkidana Yele, and Dr. Azam of Civil Engineering Department. We participated in UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Upgrade of Existing Water Resource Recovery Facilities to perform co-digestion utilizing plant modeling, energy modeling, and life cycle assessment. This is a research that we're doing with Dr. Azam to anaerobically treat sludge with food waste to generate energy such as methane and hydrogen.
Hi, I am Brandon Hunt, a graduate student in UDC Causes in the PSM program with a concentration in water resources management. I participated in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Sustainable Urban Stormwater Management Using Green Infrastructure. This is a project that I'm doing with Dr. Talesa Dexisa in the goal of finding innovative ways to fund green infrastructure projects to handle stormwater issues.
I'm Kevin Tertius, an undergraduate student at UDC College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. I'm participating in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Quantifying the Performance of
Everything that can
Retail
go wrong is
Pharmacy
going
in
wrong.
the district's MS Ward Green Roofs project. This is a research project I'm doing with Dr. Zendidel, Dr.
Messages are
Dexisa,
not even
and
coming
Mr.
up.
Harris Chauvin from Causes UDC.
Hi, I'm Kyla Woods, an undergraduate student at the University of the District of Columbia, and I attend the College of Arts and Sciences. I participated in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled UDC Earth Day Sustainability Effort Highlights. The goal I hope to achieve was to share a few things that I have learned this semester about sustainability at the University of the District of Columbia, and also to display the pride that I have in the efforts that we have made.
I am Lila Shatner, a graduate student at the University of the District of Columbia, Causes. I participated and I worked alone in the UDC's Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Our Planet is Drowning in Single-Use Plastic, Let's Save Rock Creek Park from It. I am passionate about resolving plastics pollution in our rivers and oceans, especially in our DC neighborhoods. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Prabhashan Ratnagar, graduate student in UDC courses. This is a research that I'm doing with Dr. Talesa Dexisa, the director of UDC Water Resource Research Institution and UDC PSM program. We are participating in this 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Sustainable Water Resource Management Using Machine Learning. Finding out the ways to develop an integrated water resource management model using artificial intelligence-based machine learning techniques is our goal in this project. Thank you.
I am Lilia Campos, an undergraduate student in the University of the District of Columbia. I participated in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest with a poster entitled Hope for a Green Earth. This is because the world needs the help of humanity even in this pandemic. So far, the only hope of the planet is the unconditional love of a child. Maybe we only need to shine our inside child to work effectively to save the planet.
Hi, my name is Maya Gillette. I am a senior business management major at UDC. My Earth Day poster is titled Environmental Justice and Prison Reform in Minority Communities. Our nation's prisons are filled with human beings in minority groups, family members, the young and the elderly, people whose life circumstances place them amongst the most vulnerable citizens in our country. Prisons are often built on toxic sites which point to the myriad injustices inmates endure that have led to death. Heat exposure, below freezing temperatures, cells flooded with water, coal inhalation are just a few. During COVID-19, will their treatment continue to be cruel and unusual? Is their health not just as valuable as those outside the prison walls? Does discussion about environmental impact on health end with those in prison? Thank you.
Hello, I am Camila Sarmiento, an undergraduate at UDC College of Causes. I participated in the UDC 2020 Earth Day poster contest. My artwork is titled United in Plastic We Stand. It's a future representation of what plastic pollution does to our environment and the animals in it. My goal is to raise awareness on this matter by us being more conscious about our carbon footprint and our impacts. Hi, I am Patricia McLean and
Okay. So thank you very much. One more time, I appreciate if you are joining us, you are already with us. If you could mute yourself, in this way we could better hear everybody. So that would be a great help from your side. So we wanted to make sure that the student will participate in our Earth Day and share their view, concerned, and that was a great platform for us to make sure that they can be part of this event. And we shared the poster with the group of judge, and based on the three categories that we had, advocacy, art, and research, we have our great winners. So I would like to ask Catherine if she could share the four winners with us. Okay, thank you, Catherine. The first winner, we have two winners from the advocacy. The first one is Maya Gillett. The title of her poster is Environmental Justice, Prison Reform in Minority Communities. And the second poster is in this category from Leela Shanter. So her poster title was Our Planet is Drowning in Single Plastic Use. Let's Save Rock Creek Park. So both posters were selected because of their unique vision and linked to the theme of this year, environmental justice and equity imperative. For the arts category, the judge selected Camila Sarmento for showing the impact of garbage on wildlife and being very relevant to the topic of Earth Day theme. And for the last, which is the category of research, our judges selected Kevin Curcios. So his title is Quantifying the Performance of Rooftop Farm in the District MS4. This is a research that he's doing on our green roof in Building 44. So we congratulate all four winners, but at the same time, we would like to thank all of the students who joined us and submitted a poster. We really appreciate you, and we wish you best of luck. Thank you very much. So now we will watch together a short video about the UDC Urban Food Hub. That is a way that our College of Urban Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences is working toward providing food access to all DC residents, and to make sure that access to food and food security will be will solved in DC. Okay, please share the video. And again, I appreciate if all of us could mute ourselves.
UDC's urban food hubs exemplify the university's commitment to building capacity across the diverse communities in our city, but especially in the food desert neighborhoods of Washington, D.C. The four components of our urban food hubs are food production, food preparation, food distribution, and waste and water recovery. The urban food hubs are designed to not only provide access to fresh, healthy food, but also to create jobs, improve public health, mitigate water management problems, and create urban resilience.
Causes is our College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, and Environmental Sciences. We have claimed the urban space as our zone of activity, both locally as a laboratory in the District of Columbia, but also because the lessons we learn here we think can be applied globally. Even in the nation's capital, there are things that are known as food deserts, where people in poorer communities, more challenged neighborhoods, have to walk 5 miles just to find a grocery store. Causes has established urban community gardens in these challenged urban areas in order to bring not just food that is grown, but also the process of growing, preparing, disposing of food as a way to help invigorate inner city communities.
I think the biggest improvement of quality of life for DC residents that comes from an urban food hub is in those neighborhoods that lack access to fresh food, to unprocessed food. The urban food hubs bring a little piece of nature back into our cities, where people can see how food is grown, where their food comes from, or maybe they have a raised bed garden. And so by introducing our urban food hubs into these neighborhoods that have been nature deprived, we also bring an important, more intangible component back that is not directly related to growing food or to improving the water infrastructure, but simply to reconnecting people to nature.
My role as Center for Nutrition, Diet, and Health chef, nutrition educator, is I get people to understanding the importance of eating healthy. My whole center, all of us that work together, we do food safety, we do the nutrition education, the food demonstrations as well. We're at farmers markets throughout the cities. We're in churches, we're in healthcare organizations. We're all over every ward in Washington D.C. trying to educate and change behaviors one fruit, one vegetable at a time.
Our urban farms really are all about food production, teaching people how to grow a lot of food in small urban spaces, how to prepare the food to improve their health and their well-being and their energy level, distribute the food, and close the loop.
Center for Sustainable Development and Resilience plans, designs, executes, monitors, and evaluates projects that relate to sustainable development within the urban food hubs. Sustainable development includes the triple bottom line of economy, society, and profit, and we ensure that our projects are sustainable projects and that they maximize opportunities for residents of the District of Columbia.
The link between architecture and agriculture is a lot bigger for Causes, because Causes is the only college of agriculture that has architecture and agriculture in the same college. So it's kind of unique. We work closely to combine architectural design into the agriculture. So the food hub is set up as an incubator. What will happen over time is that these systems will actually be leased out to entrepreneurs in the community, and they'll be able to have farm stands and distribution within the community to sell the produce. Currently, we are doing farm stands here, community-led, student-led farm stands where we're able to distribute the produce. And any produce currently we're actually donating to different community groups such as senior homes and youth groups.
In DC public schools, close to 55 to 60% of food provided for students is wasted. So how that food get converted to a productive, reusable component becomes very important. And so we must then find a way where we can take food waste and turn it either into compost or biofuel, or find a way where we can efficiently utilize and reuse water and prevent it from going into the stormwater system.
The Center for 4-H and Youth Development here at Causes is that component that actually deals with educating young people. I think that's crucial because not only is it educating young people, but it's giving young people leadership opportunities. And I think if we're going to make a cultural shift where people begin to embrace food hubs and urban sustainability, that if we teach young people and young people are engaged in decision making about that, then they will then in turn affect their families.
Another contribution that the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability and Environmental Sciences makes here at the University of the District of Columbia is that we offer internships to our students, and not just students from Causes, but students from other programs across the university. We are research-based, and that's one of the commitments we make at the land-grant university, that we will be about applied research. We have a strong community outreach component, and we're serious about building capacity in the community we serve. UDC's urban.
Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed watching UDC Causes Food Hub model. So now we are moving to the program. So this is the time for our expert panel discussion. As I discussed that at the end of the discussion, our followers can share their questions, and we will try our best to answer all, as many as questions that we could have. So before starting and introducing our great panelists, let me have a short introduction about 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and then I will introduce our panelists. The greatest challenge for the next generation is struggle for environmental justice. Some communities do not have access to clean air, clean water, safe school, or environmental protection. Some communities do not have the wealth or resources to protect themselves. Peggy Shepard from New York nicely named this community as a sacrifice zones, areas that are targeted for this disproportionate burden of pollution, for the byproduct of over-consumerism of industrial disregard. This year is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, a day when we demonstrate support for environmental protection. On Earth Day, many people are looking to environmental organizations and universities to help them understand how they can reduce their consumption, recycle more, support biodiversity, minimize climate change, and other efforts to improve their health of their Earth. These are important issues to tackle, but it is even more exciting to discover cities and organizations that are making additional steps to address environmental and social justice at the same time. So with this note, so I wanted to explain that in UDC, our solution as part of the city, as part of the, the effort that the city is putting together to improve environmental justice and environmental sustainability is to educate and provide affordable education to everybody in UDC, no matter their race, their income level. So you here in this slide, you can see that if you have a high school diploma, you can on average you can make around $50,000 a year in DC. But if you earn a bachelor degree, you can go up to close to 70,000, which is very closer to medium income in DC. So our solution, next slide, please. So our solution in UDC is equity imperative, making sure that we can provide affordable and quality education to the student. Next slide, please. So here in the UDC, so we believe that the opportunity to gain an excellent education and thrive as a member of the middle class should be available to everyone. Next slide, please. So in this way, we, in our equity imperative, the effort has three goals: to establish UDC as a national model for student success, double the number of UDC graduates by 2020, and produce leaders who are transformational. So with this introduction, I would like to introduce our great panelists. So the first panelist that we have here is Dr. Dwayne Jones. Dr. Jones is the acting Dean of College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability and Environmental Sciences, and the Director of Land Grant Program at University of the District of Columbia. He is a leader with over nearly 20 years of combined experience in leadership, green infrastructure program, urban design, environmental planning, and program management with government, academic, nonprofit, and community-based agencies and international government and universities. Dr. Jones uses design thinking to solve problems, innovation, prototyping, execution, and research human-centered challenges while using sustainability as a lens to address these problems. So we welcome you, Dr. Jones. So the next panelist is Antoine Holmes. He's the chair of Advisory Neighborhood Commission 7C in Ward 7. He first elected in 2013, and he focused on education, community and economic development, housing, and improved agency services in Deanwood community. Mr. Holmes partnered with DCPS, DC Public Education System, to implement the highly sought after single English dual language program at Houston Elementary, creating the first dual language immersion program taught east of the Anacostia River. He also partnered with DCPS to respond Ron Brown into high school for young men of color. He continues to partner with DC Language Immersion Project to enhance and expand dual language programming throughout the district, and partner with Digital Equity in DC Education to implement 21st century technology in all schools. Our third speaker is Dr. Mickey Fern. So Dr. Fern has been public servant, park, recreation, and conservation professional for over 50 years. He has served as a professor of practice in the North Carolina State University School of Natural Resources since 2013. From 2009 to 2013, he served as a National Park Service Deputy Director for Communication and Community Assistant. His responsibilities included community engagement and outreach, communication, public affairs, strategic planning, youth program, international affairs, partnership, legislative and congressional affairs, policy, state and local assistance. Before his tenure at National Park Service, Dr. Fern worked in Seattle, where he held a position as Director of the Innovation, for which he managed the creative energy of Seattle's 10,000 employees workforce. He created and facilitated a citywide idea managed system and created and led Seattle Facilitative Leadership Institute. So Kelly Crawford served as an associate. Kelly is our next panelist. Kelly Crawford served as Associate Director of DC Department of Energy and Environment, Air Quality Division, and Chair of DOE Equity Working Group. Ms. Crawford is a DC native with over 10 years of experience as environmental engineer and emergency management professional, including air quality, compliance, enforcement, and environmental system integrated contingency planning and remediation of environmental health hazard. Ms. Crawford previously served as Chief for DOE Air Quality Division, Compliance and Enforcement Branch, and continued to serve as the acting branch chief. And the last and not least, the panelist that we have here is our UDC student, Ms. Brenda Perez. She's a Mexican immigrant and has been living in DC since she was 10 years old. In 2018, she obtained a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from University of the District of Columbia, and she is currently pursuing a Professional Science Master in Water Resources Management in UDC. She's also an activist and politically active in national conversation around immigration rights, language access, and Black and Brown unity. In DC, she has trained immigrant youth to become community organizer and has supported Black and Brown youth develop youth-led cooperative. She is currently a Green Fellow at the Department of Energy and Environment with the Sustainable and Equity team. So let me welcome our panelists here. I'm very happy to have you here. So I would like to start with Dr. Jones. Give me 1 second, Dr. Jones.
Sure, no problem. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating.
Okay, so Dr. Jones, you are the acting dean of the College of Agriculture, Urban Sustainability, Environmental Sciences, and you are an urban planner. I would like to ask you about how we could have a sustainable and resilient city while ensuring that environmental justice and equity is also, is present. How is UDC causes helping the city toward this goal?
And thank you, Cameron. That's a very good question and a loaded question at that. The college is the urban land grant college of the district and of the institution, the University of the District of Columbia. And as such, that means that we have an additional responsibility other than the traditional academic degree program. We have the traditional or the additional responsibility, I should say, to reach out into the public to provide skill building, relevant education that is relevant to the needs of the district. And we do that through three primary ways, and I'll use 3 L's to identify those 3 ways. Number 1 is listen. Number 2 is learn. Number 3 is leverage. Listen, learn, and leverage. We listen to the public, to the district, the needs of the district, and we develop relevant programming that we can offer all throughout the district on food security, green infrastructure, nutrition education, architecture, urban design, urban planning, etc. We listen to the needs of the public and provide relevant and applied research, as Dr. O'Hara said in the previous video, that can impact the residents of the District of Columbia and thus impact the world. So number 1 is listen. Number 2 is learn. We learn from the residents of the District of Columbia. We learn through applied research. We learn what the needs are so that we can provide relevant research and education to help meet the needs of the public and the district. And number 3, leverage. We leverage the resources that we have. And if we don't have the resources to meet the needs, then we will seek to identify the resources through partnerships, such as District Department of Energy and the Environment, such as nonprofits, such as partnering with local government, such as Antoine, who is on the is one of the panelists today and also an ANC member, which is Advisory Neighborhood Commission. We partner with other institutions like NC State. Professor Mickey Fern is on the line with us as well. And through these partnerships, through the lens of listening, through the lens of ensuring that we're learning from the public, that we're addressing the needs, then we desire and aim to provide a sustainable future for the district, which also impacts the rest of the world.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones. That was a very great introduction also to causes and college. Thank you for that. Let me move to Dr. Fern. So Dr. Fern, you have been working on parks and conservation projects for a long, long time. Please share your view. The role of parks and green spaces in promoting social justice. Why do environmental justice and equity matter for our cities? You are muted. You are muted, Dr. Fern.
We good?
Yes.
All right. First, let me say I grew up in Washington, D.C., Southeast D.C., graduated from McKinley High School, and UDC wasn't even thought of when I was there. But when you're looking at the kind of work you're doing, I wish it could have been there when I was around. I want to acknowledge the unbelievable inspirational message that President Mason gave us. I think he put it together that this is all one earth, it's all one world, and it's all systematic. I think anything we need to understand about environmental justice, we can look at the world today and what's going on and see exactly what the problems are. But environmental justice is the confluence of environment, economics, racism, and politics. Okay, next slide. All right. I was going to say that to the end, but the essence of love is to help something grow. And the Parks and Recreation work I've done in working in urban areas to help people create community gardens, we found out that young people who were antisocial, either as introverts or extroverts in gangs, never had anything to love. And when they began to grow, when they began to create community gardens, was the first time that they understood what it means. Love is to help something grow, is to help something develop. And once they got involved in that kind of endeavor, it changed their entire approach to life. All right, the reality in American society is we need an unlimited number of people who believe that $8 an hour is the best they're ever going to be able to do in their lives. And that has created this thing that you could respond to negatively as a culture of despair, or you could look at it as an underestimated culture, but all disproportionality, whether we're talking about education, environment, criminal justice, lives in that block. That's where disproportionality lives. Next slide. These are the kinds of things that exist in those areas. High unemployment, low educational attainment, high dropout rates, you can see them, family instability, neglect, psychic residue. And the interesting thing about that list is it was created in 1965 by the Kerner Report. But you could go to most of our cities now and see that those same things are going on. So this begs the question, why doesn't that change? So the next slide is a Time magazine cover when Time magazine went to Baltimore after Freddie Gray was killed and looked around Baltimore and said, nothing's changed since 1968. So they crossed out their 1968 cover and put 2015. Okay, let's go on. Next slide. Okay, the lifespan in my zip code, which is 27610 in East Raleigh, is 13 years less than in a zip code 5 miles away. The lifespan in my zip code is 13 years less than a zip code 5 miles away. And we have to ask ourselves, why is that? How could there be that kind of discrepancy? And a part of it is based on the place where people are forced to live, where you have park deserts and you have food deserts. But a part of it is also based on the choices that people make. So it's not just the physicality of the community of the despair. It's the choices that that community of despair chooses people to make in terms of what they eat and a whole bunch of other things. So, although environmental injustices contribute more to mortality and morbidity than any other factor, it is a low priority for people who live in those neighborhoods. So I've been to Portland, Seattle, Philadelphia, and when you talk to African American people in those areas about what their priorities are, environmental justice never comes up, even though it contributes more to mortality and morbidity than any other thing. The things in that community, life expectancy, eating for happiness, poor health, asthma, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, all of those things exist in that area. Next slide, please. All right, so I don't have to go through this slide. This just basically says that people who live in urban areas don't live as long as people who live in middle class areas. So let's move to the next slide. All right. As it relates to recreation, and this is really important because this is the thing about choice. First of all, people of color tend to believe that recreation is something for their children. And it's something for their children to get engaged in, but it's not something for them to get engaged in. When they're engaged in it, when young people engage in parks and recreation in urban areas, it's about immediate gratification, reliant on the indigenous environment. Activities don't require a lot of expense, but the reality is because of the northern migration and we moved into communities where there is no nature-based recreation. There's lack of appreciation for nature. And the dominant culture tries to convince us that nature doesn't exist in our neighborhood and you shouldn't worry about that nature is out there somewhere. Next slide. All right, lifestyles. Free time is a petri dish. A lot of people have nothing to do and have nothing to lose. Patterns of consumption, all of those things go into creating this environmental justice issue and this lifestyle problem. Next slide, please. All right. So in Parks and Recreation, there's this belief that people can do whatever they want with their discretionary time. And if there's certain things they choose not to get involved in, it's their business. But there are three things that are really interrelated that everybody needs. I don't care, it's a need of the heart and the human soul. One is creativity. Living a life that embraces originality and makes unique connections between seemingly disparate things. Creativity is about living life. Nature, contact with nature is a basic human need, not a cultural amenity, not an individual preference, but a universal primary need. Just as we need healthy food and regular exercise to flourish, we need an ongoing connection with the natural world. And then finally, loving kinship. The quality of our lives depends on our ability to maintain relationships with others and to understand the fiscal and the psychic costs of those things to our organizations, our communities, and our people. So the bottom line is your recreation choices reveal a lot about who you are. And this primary problem with urban lifestyle is as we get older, we have no connection with nature and our recreation activities are sedentary and they're passive. Add to that the issue of park deserts and food deserts, and that's why you get that 13-year discrepancy in lifespan. The thing that disturbs me about this is that Black people don't seem to care about it. And it's different for different ethnic groups. I'm talking about Black people because this is what I've been studying. But with that mortality and morbidity, it's not their concern. They're concerned about police, they're concerned about jobs, they're concerned about a lot of things, but understand that environmental injustices contribute more to mortality and morbidity than any other single cause, and we've got to light a fire unto people about that. So,
Dr. Fern, I really appreciate that. It's really sad to hear that 13 years difference in life expectancy, but this is the reality. We will come back to that issue. If you let me ask my next question from Ms. Crawford, and then I will get back to that topic. We want all to hear more about that. So Ms. Crawford, I really appreciate that you joined us through this panel, and you work in DOE. Department of Energy and Environment, a lead organization in environmental sustainability and resilience in DC. So I would like to know, and I would like to hear that how are you and your colleague, your team in DOE, they are trying to improve environmental sustainability and environmental justice in Washington, DC.
Thank you, Cameron. Hi, I'm Kelly Crawford. I am the Associate Director for the Air Quality Division, and I am now the Chair of the Equity Working Group. The Sustainable DC 2.0 plan is a vision. It's a roadmap to create the District of Columbia's healthiest, greenest, most livable city in the United States. Slide. I think we'll go 2 slides. We've already talked about the economic and racial disparities that exist in our city. And I just like to point out that equity is not the same as equality. And with this plan, we focused on the second generation of the plan on incorporating equity as a starting place for developing the plan. Next slide. You can go 2 more. 1, right. Thank you. So in this version of the plan, we started with actively engaging the community. We started an equity advisory group with a goal of getting input on how our climate plans would impact neighborhoods from the people who lived in the community themselves. We identified individuals to participate in a broad process, a collaborative process with partners from the Georgetown Climate Center. And one of these, for example, was in the far northeast Ward 7 neighborhood. They were identified by Climate Ready DC as being particularly vulnerable to climate change. And we had a goal of reducing the obstacles to participating in the engagement on with DOE. So we provided dinner, we provided childcare, transportation, and a stipend. Much like we resource our partners, we wanted to resource the community to actively participate in this process and have meaningful engagement with them. The value was twofold. We got incredible insight on how to do climate work in Ward 7, and we established a group of community leaders who care about the work that we're doing and have a model for how to run inclusive community engagement groups like this for the future. We also hired a facilitator to make sure that we, the government, didn't steer the conversation, that we allowed the community to lead the conversation and to hold the power. And also we included an equity evaluator to help us course correct and to provide an evaluation of how we did at the end of the program and throughout. Slide. Yep. That was all. You can go ahead, Cameron.
Okay. So thank you. And we will definitely go back. So I'm really interested to know more about the model that you described about being inclusive, engaged community, and not just pushing community by government view, giving them the opportunity. But I will come back to that question later. Let me move on to Mr. Holmes. So Mr. Holmes, again, thank you for joining us. So you are an ANC commissioner in Ward 7. So please share your view on how can we use environment as an organizing tool together and activate communities and schools in low-income areas for reaching a more equitable city.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm the chair of ANC 7C. Thank you for talking about the far northeast area. That's in our area as well. So one of the major issues in the east end of the city is basically food security. But one of our assets is we have a lot of undeveloped green spaces. So, knowing that and knowing the community would like to see grocery store amenities is one of the big things. We like to make sure we look at with all the massive development that's having to come to ANC, we like to make sure that we inject green jobs and commercial and commercial opportunities to address that, such as grocery store. So that's when we do that. We work with our council member. We push for the East End Food Desert Bill. We wanted to get funded. So that's one part of it. But the other part is, while we're doing the issue of trying to make sure that these things get funded for stores, big or small, and in all places, we try to work with our partners like we did with UDC. We approved the East Capitol Urban Farm and work with them to make sure that we can they made sure they were green, there were raised garden beds there so that community members come out there and use the beds. We also do the same thing with Women Out Loud, telling the farms. We've done that for Arcadia Food Truck to make sure we get food to the people, so that that we're not in a holdup waiting for development for things to happen. We've also worked with Joyful Food Market, that's Martha's Table, to get those get the extra food service and groceries to folks at elementary schools, at rec centers. And then every time we think about these school developments, we also try to inject more and more green opportunities, such as raised beds, like we did at Ron Brown. We do in raised beds. We're also doing the first greenhouse and green roof. We went and we toured, of course, UDC, and they gave us a great background information with the developers so that we can bring those type of innovations back to the East End and recreate them here. So again,
Mr. Holmes, can I ask you a question here? So how was the community engagement? How do you analyze that? Do you think that the environmental movement is bringing that energy to the low-income community to engage?
Yeah, so the way our engagement is lots and lots of outreach, knocking on doors, making sure people come to not only to the ANC meetings, but come to their civic associating meeting. Whenever there's information that comes out about any type of meeting, like Sustain DC, when they had theirs over at the Riverside Cafe, we make sure we put that information out there. So basically, the outreach and we have it multiple modes. You got to knock on doors, you have to print flyers, you have to do listservs, you have to do email lists. You got to reach out to those people, bring them in, and then once we have those meetings, we make sure we start bringing in folks so we can start going over what are the options to start addressing those matters. Whether it's if we're doing a new development project, we bring DEMPED in, Office of Planning when we're trying to do a comp plan. We're talking about there's areas that need to be recategorized so that we can put commercial development up there to address food issues. When it's about funding, it's multiple different groups to get funding on these projects. DACD is one of them. So basically making sure that we get the people together at a meeting with the agencies that can help have that discussion of getting us to the next level. Those spaces, that when you start doing community benefits agreements, you put in those, make sure that there are hiring opportunities, make sure that there are green jobs that are being applied to those projects. That's how we get it done.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. That seems very exciting. Thank you very much. So let me move to Miss Prez, Brenda Prez. Brenda, you are active. You are an activist. You are working with minority groups, with brown and black people. Let me ask you this. So let me talk about environmental movement and activism, and how environmental movement and activism can help and energize minorities to have a voice and be able to share their view on different topics such as immigration rights, environmental justice, water quality, air quality, and so forth.
So hi everybody. Again, my name is Brenda Perez, and I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to the panel. I feel so right at home because I'm a UDC student, and I'm also a Green Fellow at the DOEE. And we're talking about environmental justice and activism. So this is really cool. So I guess just to start, let me share just like a little bit of where I come from. So I'm originally from Mexico. I migrated here to DC when I was 10 years old. I didn't know how to speak English, and I was like completely undocumented, and I was, having all of these issues in my community. And, I grew up in Columbia Heights, went to school without walls, and You know, like it wasn't until like a lot of mentors and a lot of teachers started to approach me that, you know, like I started to see like how valuable my points of view were to them. And I think that with environmental justice, you know, like or like with activism movements, you know, like if we're able to give people the space, you know, we'll slowly start to realize that in all of these environmental justice movements, whether it's like immigration, you know, looking for safer neighborhoods, food security, somehow along the line, it always intersects with the environment. You know, at one point you'll start to hear like immigration stories about like how people came to this country because they were suffering from climate changes back where they were coming from, or they were suffering from like heavily polluted cities. So I think that in order for us to be able to start this, you know, we have to realize that there are these intersections and that an environmentalist looks like me also. And that an environmentalist can also be, you know, like an immigrant person, you know, or a person of color. And we also have to kind of like change our definition of the environment a little bit. You know, it's not just nature, it's not just the trees, it's not just the birds, you know. Something that I like to tell the students that I work with is that the environment is, you know, like all the places that you interact with every day, you know, like your school, your house, the streets, the bus stop. So then when I start to engage them in these conversations around sustainability, it's like, what will make those things safer for you? You know, what has to change so that you feel safe at home, so that you feel like you're safe in the streets, that you're safe at school, you know. And yeah, you'll start to see that there are all of these intersections. And working at the DOEE with the urban sustainability and equity team, you know, we engage in a lot of these conversations. Something that we're doing is we're collaborating with community partners. One of these community partners is Empower DC, and they focus solely on affordable housing and other issues, but affordable housing is their main issue. And we started a collaboration and where we started to redefine what equity means to the community and what the sustainability mean to them. And in those conversations as well, you know, there was a lot of stuff about, you know, like access to affordable housing, you know, making sure that our communities have a place at the decision-making table, that we're the ones leading the policies. It's important to hear all of these stories, all of these like anecdotes, because we as, you know, like organizations, we may know like what kind of solutions we may want to see, you know, but like climate change is like such a time sensitive issue. You know, we only have 10 years until its impacts become irreversible, you know. So if we don't start to talking to communities right now, you know, like how are we going to identify what the real problem is? What is it? What is the root issue that we have to tackle right now in this like time sensitive issue? So, you know, this is why I engage in activism, you know, and why I decided to work with the government and continue my education, because I think it's important, you know, that we start voicing these things. And from the government and the university side, you know, it's important that we start to listen to community members around these issues and open our minds to what an environmentalist is, and like continue to expand this definition of what sustainability and what the environment is and what it should look like for our communities.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So let me go back, you know, before going to my next question, I want to remind our followers, so wherever you are, we want to hear from you. So please share your question. If you are following WebEx, you can use the comment section. You can share your question or remarks or anything that you have. So around 11:20, so we will, you know, around 11:10, I think we will 10 or 20, we will share to question, answering the question, your question or comments. So we would like to hear from you. So please share your question, concern, or anything that you have, and I will do our best to share those with our panel. So let me go back to the something that as a central. So we started to think about Earth Day, PC team working with DOE team, maybe from early February. At that time, we didn't have any coronavirus, but we were really interested to have this event as it was this year is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is a huge movement for us. Every day, as President Mason said, that we are sure that Earth as our mother has the capacity to take care of us, but are we take care of her? So that is really a central question, and President Mason highlighted very well. But when we wanted to think about the topic, we wanted to move beyond just planting trees or collecting plastics. So I'm not saying that those are not good, but we wanted to focus on something that we believe that is important component of environmental sustainability and resilience. I teach here in UDC, and for me, environmental justice is important. So let me start this for all of you. I want to start with Dr. Fern. So, Dr. Fern, you talk about a little bit about the minority communities, and you said that maybe environment is not their top priority as they are dealing with many problems. If I'm jobless, if I'm looking for a job, maybe air quality, maybe water quality is not very important for me, or maybe even I'm not seeing that. So I want to know, if you want to talk, if you want to highlight that, if you want to improve that, how you think that environment can be used as a tool to improve environmental justice. Give us some tip to the community, those who are listening and following.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me say this. When I interviewed to be the deputy director of the National Park Service, the Secretary of Interior asked me, "So, Mickey, what are you going to do to get more Black people camping and hiking?" Right? And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Secretary, I don't care nothing about camping and hiking. Now, that's hyperbole. I do care about it. But I said the question I want to answer is, how did a group of people who had a profound ancestral relationship with nature, who lived at one with nature and understood nature in Africa, how did they get here and have that whole thing destroyed? How did it get destroyed from the narrative being we live in one with nature and nature is wonderful, to nothing good happens out there? So that's the thing that I'm trying to understand. What is it we do? Well, and actually, so let me give you an example of something we did. We created an organization called the Neighborhood Ecology Corps for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to get familiar with environment and ecology, not by taking them out to remote places, but getting them to see that stuff in their neighborhood. Now, despite the fact that there's an imbalance in terms of the amount of nature in those neighborhoods, the reality is there is nature in those neighborhoods. So we took these 20 kids who suffer from something called biophobia, which is fear of nature, and we put them through a process that caused them to get rid of the biophobia and to become really excited about it, and to excite their parents and families and their neighbors about it. But the idea is that you have to take some action, and you have to do something like that to destroy that perception that if you go out into nature, there'll be violence, that something will hurt you, that it won't be fun. So that we had to create something that turned those young people onto that. Well, now 4 years later, some of those kids are in college, and each of them is majoring in some kind of science or some kind of natural resource thing. So the idea is that what people typically do to try to fix this is to take kids from cities out to remote places and say that's where nature is. And what we did, as I said earlier, is we introduced them to nature in a place that was familiar to them, that was their neighborhood. And then we took them to remote places and we said, how can you replicate these things that go on in nature out there in your neighborhood? But it was always, the basis was always the environmental issues in your neighborhood, not that we need to take you out of the neighborhood to have those experiences or to have those careers. And then not only are those kids participating in that stuff recreationally, but it's become a part of their career inventory.
That is very, very interesting. Based on what you explained, it seems that exposing young people and community to environment, even promote them to go to schools and colleges and earn their degrees. So let me go with that to Mr. Holmes, who's leading NC7C in Ward 7. So how do you think that now engaging environment, the list of programs that you highlighted, is really promoting community, in particular young, young African American, to go to colleges and have a degree and hopefully move to middle class?
I'm sorry about that. Can you repeat that last portion? It was a little choppy for me.
So, we hear that, Dr. Friend talk about that. So engaging, minorities in environmental activity, even push them move toward, going to schools and colleges and earn higher degrees. So are you seeing that with the long list of activities that you highlighted as part of your portfolio? So do you see that now pushing the minority and kids going through school, high school, and colleges, and then move hopefully to middle class?
So yeah, we had Rooting DC over at Ron Brown about a month and a half ago, and definitely we saw that there were booths set up where we saw high school students were doing green jobs there, such as making honey and selling it to everybody, making their own soap. So they're doing a little bit of that green entrepreneurship at the high school levels. I know that these high school chartered by me idea, they also do their own honey. They're working on a lot of other green opportunities of doing raised beds and trying to do some of the selling of vegetables, et cetera. So we're seeing that start to happen. We definitely want to see more. And we want to continue to keep, partnering with the high schools and UDC, et cetera, so we can get that whole pathway loop that kids can go to high school, go to UDC, go to some of the programs they have there, and then come back to the community with the things they learned and help implement what they've learned. I mean, one of the things that we did early on, hello, I thought I heard somebody. One of the things that we did early on, when we were working with UDC, is we did the 5 Pillars program with Dr. O'Hare to talk about what does that look like so that we can start bringing that type of sustainability back into the communities over here on the East End, and identifying those green jobs that are out there that people are taking advantage of now and will continue to be out there for the future. Again, you'll see a lot of solar panel installations. You'll see a lot of developing of gardens and landscapes. And over here, I will say again, green spaces being an asset that we have, there are a lot of neighbors out here, especially in the Dima community, that have their own raised bed gardens in the back, their own foods. We do seed exchange. So we're starting to get that, but again, that culture we need to keep talking about it more so that it gets a bigger upkeep. But we are having those discussions about, gardening and other healthy activities.
Okay, that is very good. That is very, very good news, from your side. So let me move to Brenda. Brenda, so you are working with a lot of minority groups. So let me ask you this: how do they see environmental activities and program in DC as an opportunity to open and enable them to engage in decision making, and their voice be heard? So I want you to share some of their views about this program.
Yeah, so I guess that the best example that I have, or like the best things that I have to give, is like my own like narrative. When I was in high school, I decided to do a science senior based project, right? And so UDC at that time, I don't know if you guys still have it, they had this program called the Environmentors, which is, several people through the university who are collaborating with these high school students to provide them information around like their science project and just like guide them into like what the environment is. And they approached my school specifically. I wasn't looking for them, which I thought was really cool. That's a really important part, that, we're continuously reaching out to these high schools. So I joined this project. I received a lot of mentorship from UDC professors, including Dwayne Jones. And, it was also like a reason why I decided to go to UDC, because there was just a lot of support for me to continue this into this pathway. But yeah, I also work with an organization called City Blossoms, and we do a lot of engagement with high school students, in particular Eastern High School and Wilson High School, which is in Cardozo, which is in nearby Columbia Heights. And some of the things that I think are so important, like I said, it's like one, if you have a really cool opportunity for students, like approach them. I also try to make sure that whenever I engage these students, that there is language access and like culturally sensitive programming and workshops that are age appropriate to kind of just like get them excited a little bit about the environment and how the environment can relate to them. I think it's like such a like misconception, that young people are not interested about the environment, but we have to change our programming in a way that it makes sense to them, so making sure that the information is accessible, that it's fun. And throughout like, my work, I've seen, like immigrant students engage in conversations around food access, and these were like 25 students through City Blossoms. I was able to engage like like about like 50 students of color into like a garden-based youth-led cooperative, and start to talk about like entrepreneurship and access to green spaces. So yeah, I think you just have to make like all of these programs like relevant, like age appropriate and like fun and like culturally sensitive.
Okay, that is very great. Thank you very much. So let me move on with my next question. So I want to start with Dr. Jones and then go to Ms. Kelly from DOE, Ms. Crawford from DOE. So now, we planned originally to have the Earth Day event face to face. Now we are living in a coronavirus or COVID-19 era. So every corner of our life is impacted, or with this problem. But one thing that we wanted to have, that we were sure that we want to have this event, is why we moved it to virtual environment, and that dramatically impacted our so impacted our budget, the way that we are communicating, the way that we are teaching our classes. So Dr. Jones, I want to ask you. So we want to be resilient. So how do you think that this coronavirus problem is impacting our resilience status? And also how it is impacting our environmental movement and sustainability work here in DC?
Mhm. Thank you, Cameron. Those are very good questions. I'll start by using the phrase that I use quite often, creativity in crisis. And we find that individuals are most often creative in times of crisis or in times of trauma and in times when we don't have any other choice. And so in this case, what I'm seeing personally here in DC and particularly at UDC um, is a need to pivot and a need that is driven by no other alternative. We have the coronavirus. We're not necessarily controlling it. It's more controlling us at this particular time, but we are doing what we can to manage it. And so I see that we have pivoted in ways that we would not have pivoted otherwise. I see people becoming more resilient. And I heard someone say once, a person really doesn't know how resilient they are until they're put in a particular situation that requires them to be resilient. And I believe that's the circumstance we're in now is because of the nature of the uh, coronavirus, because of the circumstances, because of the economy, the social impacts, the social distancing, and ultimately some environmental connections and behaviors that will be influenced and impacted as well. We will see people look at life a little differently, and I refer to it as the new normal. We will not be the same as we were, but we certainly will be different. And how we will be different, TBD, to be determined. It depends on the case, depends on the situation. But ultimately, we will be resilient. We will get through this, but we'll get through this with some challenges. It's going to take a while, and we'll need to determine how we move forward best, mentally, physically, socially, and emotionally.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, if you are not speaking, I appreciate if you could mute yourself. So let me move to Ms. Crawford. So DOE is leading many environmental projects. So now, as we are, it's COVID-19 era, many projects, budget of many projects was frozen or maybe minimized. So what is your prediction? How do you think the city can really tackle this problem and move beyond this and hope that we can keep our momentum to move toward environmental sustainability and resilience in DC?
Well, I think one thing I'm really proud about how my agency has been responding to this crisis is that we've been incredibly flexible and creative, innovative, and resilient through this process. For the last 6 weeks, DOEE has been open for business. Although our staff is teleworking, our inspectors are still conducting their compliance oversight to ensure that work is being completed in compliance with environmental regulations. Our energy assistance centers are still from their telework locations at a reduced schedule and modified service, but still ensuring that residents are receiving the assistance that they need. And we're also continuing to issue permits, for example, air quality permits and asbestos abatement permits to ensure that that we're keeping the business of DOEE going through this crisis.
Okay, so that is very good news. So it seems that the services that you are providing, they are, they're still, they're providing them, no matter what is happening here. That is a very, very good news. So my next question is about, again, coronavirus, but I am seeing, something from in my chat box that maybe I could save time a little bit to read that question because it's very close to what I have. Is there a relationship between coronavirus crisis and environmental justice? So I just, open it up to any of you that wants to start first.
I'd like to start with that one. That's something that we've been thinking a lot about. And one of the connections that we're seeing come out of some of the research, some great work that's being done by the research community and this accidental experiment that we found ourselves in, is that there is a link between air quality and the susceptibility to the coronavirus. As we know, air quality impacts susceptibility to respiratory illness. So having a global pandemic of a respiratory illness really highlights how the air quality in disadvantaged areas with poor degraded air quality are being especially hard hit because of their long time exposure to particulate matter and other contaminants.
Okay, so anybody else wants to add any comments here? Dr. Fern? Dr. Jones, if you want to share anything here.
Okay, the relationship is undeniable. I mean, when you look at food deserts and park deserts and air, and when you look at what's called psychic residue, which is physical evidence of bad decisions, when you look at the lack of green space, there is no question that this is showing us, this virus is showing us more than anything ever could in very clear ways that environmental injustice that poor and sometimes people of color face is the cause that they're more susceptible to this. And the whole environmental degradation thing. So I think it's just, the whole issue of asthma, diabetes has to do with food, air, water, exercise, a whole bunch of other things. So I think this is clearly illustrating that, that environmental justice is a huge problem.
Okay, so thank you. I am moving to the next question for our followers here. So that's for Dr. Jones. What are the special opportunities that causes College of Agriculture, Sustainability and Environmental Sciences has by being part of an urban land-grant university?
Cameron, thank you. Will you repeat the question once again? It was breaking up just a little.
What are the special opportunities that causes provide by being part of an urban land-grant university? So my guess is that mostly should be related to the topic.
Sure. We offer programs in food security, green infrastructure. We offer traditional academic programs in architecture, nutrition and dietetics, health education. We have a BA, a Bachelor's in Arts in Urban Sustainability. We have a PhD program in Urban Leadership and Entrepreneurship. And we're in the process of putting the nursing program online. Causes is a very disciplinary program in that as Dr. O'Hara would say, and she's on the line here, the previous dean of the college and founding dean, and she would say, we're the only college in the nation that has architecture and nursing under the same umbrella, and also architecture and nutrition and dietetics under the same umbrella. And what it does, it offers us unique opportunities for interdisciplinary relationships, interdisciplinary research, and engagement with our students in a way that we believe the world truly operates. While specialties are needed, the world really doesn't operate in the silo of a specialty. It operates in the really the panoramic view of interdisciplinarity, if that's a real word in the real world. And so what that means is we have designed the college that way. We've organized the college that way, that we operate in this urban environment of Washington, D.C. We use Washington, D.C. as a classroom, and we use the residents of the District of Columbia, the knowledge of the faculty and staff of the university, to help build out this model that can be extrapolated to other areas around the world.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jones. Thank you very much. So I am reading next question. I want to ask Dr. Fern to start that, then I go to Mr. Holmes. What are the most impactful steps that individual can take now to make the most significant changes in our individual community? Dr. Fern, you are muted.
Yeah, okay. That's a very complicated question. And one of the things that we're learning here is that this whole thing is a system. The whole thing is a system, whether we're talking about nature, economics, sociocultural stuff, it's a system, and we have to get people to realize that it's a system. Now, fundamental to the problem is that I believe that that people in the dominant culture have always seen people of color as a lower form of life, and that they really don't care about what happens to those people. Those people are necessary in terms of doing minimum wage jobs and that kind of stuff, but we really don't care that they die early. We really don't care that they're sick. So the whole question for me is, how do we get our community to be as concerned about the air they breathe and the water they drink and the food they eat and the exercise they get or don't get? How do we mobilize our community to take care of themselves? The reality is, what Life in America has shown us is, for people who live in the communities we're talking about, they got to realize that nobody's coming to help. And if they don't take it upon themselves, and I think UDC is doing some of this. I want this virus to go away because I want to come up here and be with you guys because of the exciting work you're doing. But the reality is, we're going to have to get people in neighborhoods to understand that they have the power to change this, that we can't rely on the system to come rescue us because the system never has. So the question is, how do we get schools and parks and recreation agencies and universities and businesses and all of those people to come together to begin to work on the issues that exist in those communities? If we don't do that, this thing is just going to continue to exist.
Okay, so let me thank you for that. So let me move to Antoine. So Antoine, what do you think about that? What are your advice on the best individual action?
So definitely, again, from what I was discussing before, is that it's the outreach process. As new people move into the neighborhoods, or as people who are in the neighborhoods and don't know of all of the changes that are occurring, we as community leaders, we have to go out there and reach out to them and engage them and let them know of all the organizations that already exist, that are working on whether it's in environmental justice and jobs and community amenities, et cetera. We have groups out there already, just making sure we get people involved. Come to the meeting, come learn what's going on, so that we don't sit there and people try to recreate the wheel on some of these issues. I mean, they're out there, they're running. What we'll find is that it's an issue of people being able to have the time or the capacity to help push some of these issues along. And if another one or two people join, we may be able to get over the hump of getting some of these things done. So I usually like to tell people, whether it's meet them. Right now, we're a lot of it is online meetings, but come to the meetings, come learn what some of the issues are, and if you have capacity, please come help. Okay. Come help push things.
Great, thank you. So let me ask the same question from Brandon. Brandon, you are a Green Fellow at DOE. Do you have any recommendation or advice?
Sorry, what was the question again?
The question was that what is the best individual action that anybody could take at this time to support environmental quality, sustainability, and justice?
Oh yeah, so I think think my best advice for anybody, is just like be super engaged in your like ANC meetings, try to testify, if there is like any problems in the environment that you see in your community, like raise them up to your community leaders, because from this side, at the DOEE, they have a lot of room and a lot of ways in which they can impact policy and change the environment around us. So I encourage everybody personally to be like super politically active, reach out to your ANCs, to your council members, to the mayor, to the different agencies, do a little bit of research about like how the DC government works and try to raise those questions, try to raise those concerns as well.
Okay, so that's great. So I have another question here that is coming from my list. I want to know that we talk about some of the changes that happening to just now, like Earth Day. We moved to a completely virtual environment. I want to see that during the last few years, we have seen great improvement in environmental quality in Washington, D.C. What are the areas that we might want to change? It can be in a policy, program, budgeting, anything that we may want to talk about to make sure that we can continue and we can see this progress in DC and or anywhere else. So maybe I can start with Ms. Crawford first.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Could you repeat it?
So my question is about what are the things that we might want to change? Can be budget, can be program, anything that you might think of to ensure that environmental program can progress in our city. It can be about justice, sustainability, anything that we have now in place.
I think that the things that there hasn't been a change in what things that we as an agency prioritize for improvement for environmental quality going forward in the future. I think that the impacts of coronavirus only highlight the need to continue to press forward to meet the goals of our existing plans, such as Sustainable DC, Climate Ready DC, Resilient DC. Those plans all outline activities, goals, and timelines for the District of Columbia to pursue to meet the ultimate goals of having the cleanest, greenest, livable city in America.
Okay, great. So Dr. Jones, do you think that anything might we want to change to make sure that we can continue our sustainability project in DC?
Yes, Cameron, good question. And this question reminds me of a study I conducted as a master's student years ago. And it was actually in North Carolina where I studied policies and environmental policy and learned that the state was enacting or had enacted many policies related to the environment, but those that were affected by the policies were not aware that those policies were in existence. And so the point or the takeaway there is behavior change, because those that were not affected by the policies were not aware of the policies. They never changed their behaviors. And so we had lots of policies, but no real measurable impact from those policies other than the fact that they were a policy that were, there were policies that were enacted. And so what I would say, and this will be a somewhat biased statement sitting here at UDC, is education is important to create awareness. And without awareness, we can pass all sorts of policies, but if those that are impacted by those policies are not aware of those policies, then we will not see the impact that we would have hoped for when we enacted the policy.
Okay, very good point. Thank you. So Dr. Fern, do you think that we might want to change anything our current policies to ensure continuity in our sustainability program?
Okay, there was a beat right in the middle of your question. So could you?
The main question I want to have is that do we need to change anything in our planning programming to ensure that our progress in our sustainability project across the United States, including our city, might be changed to ensure the continuity of our progress?
Yeah, and this may not get directly to your question, but one of the things I was impressed by when I looked at the video about what UDC is doing, they're actually doing stuff. And I found, especially in dealing with equity work and environmental justice work, is that people are real good at describing the problem and telling you what's wrong. And after they tell you what's wrong, they don't have any idea about what to do. But the work you guys are doing with gardens and a whole bunch of things. So I have started to subscribe to this thing called minimally viable products. I read this book about technology that said technology companies are putting out inadequate products because they know the market will create them. The market will correct them, right? I think we just need to start doing stuff. I think we need to start getting groups of citizens together interested in the things that they're interested in and support them in the context of doing that work, and spend less time describing what's wrong and more time working on little experiments all over DC or all over the country that actually not only make progress, but help you learn about what the situations are. So, and I'm a Parks and Recreation guy, and I always wonder why people don't work with Parks and Recreation agencies, because they do more education and work with more kids than anybody on the planet. But to work with all those agencies to actually start doing experiments from which we can learn and also make progress.
Okay, great. So I'm reading another question. To me, is really interesting from my chat box here. What impacts, and we may want to start with Antoine. So what impacts do emerging digital divide have on news, food, health, and park desert areas? Antoine, did you hear that? Sorry, speaking, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Just repeat, it was discussion of the digital divide?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Well, what we've seen here in terms of the digital divide and the lack of access information necessary needed high speed in COVID during the COVID time is it's really been an impact, especially on education. We've been spending a lot of time working, reaching out to DCPS and Octo to find out what can we do to basically triage the current situation right now in terms of getting people access to computers and high-speed internet to be able to participate in the everyday of what's going on during the coronavirus.
Okay.
Mostly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me move to Brenda. So Brenda, do you see any impact because of the digital divide that we have regarding, again, news, health, food, and so forth in the city? Minority communities.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the question is about the digital divide, the impact of digital divide on the areas that now the city is trying to reach people and provide information, food, health, and all on anything else that the city is trying to reach the community and provide information.
Yeah, so I mean there is this obvious racial divide, like I think at one point Mr. Fern, Dr. Fern, like talked about, how there is like a 13 year difference between like mortality rate between like his zip code and like 5 miles away. And this is true for, like Ward 7 and 8 and like a very like the 10% of community or 10% of community members that live in Ward 1, which are mostly like Spanish speaking immigrants. So like again, like there is this racial divide, but we're like trying to like engage these residents, we're trying to be more understanding of like the cultural differences and trying to make sure that we're really listening to them to really know what the problem is, because at one point we talked, that unless we listen to communities, and try to really understand the root problem, we're just going to continue to create like policies.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Crawford, anything related to this that you want to share? What impact do emerging digital divide on the services that we are providing? News, food, health, anything in the city? If you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, so the digital divide, it does, especially during this coronavirus crisis, it has made us really take a step back and look at how we were presenting information to the public and how we were making our outreach touch points in the absence of being able to hold live face-to-face meetings, to be a little bit more attentive about how we are communicating with the public. One of the things that we kind of grappled with, and we had some discussions with EPA about how we would go forward with public noticing of documents. That's the opportunity that we, DOEE, have to engage with the public on decisions such as on permitting decisions. And essentially, we had a couple of permits that we decided to delay the public notice period so that we could ensure that the communities would be able to be actively engaged and involved with the process of approving those permits. I also had conversations with the Air Director of Maryland that they're taking a similar stance, that it's too important to have an opportunity to engage meaningfully with the community, to take the convenience of just holding a virtual online hearing, knowing that certain permits are in communities where there might not be access to a computer, or they might not be able to become aware that the hearing is even going to happen, to know to call in if we provide a call-in option. So just taking a serious step back and not exchanging convenience in favor of expediency when people's lives are going to be infected by your decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. So Dr. Fern, you have 1 minute if you want to share anything on this point.
I think, and I think I kind of said what I would finish with, and that is that we really have to get the communities that we're working with to understand that they can change this, right? As I said earlier, some of the environmental injustices occur because they're forced to live in certain communities, and then they're making choices about what they want to do. And so we need to ring the alarm bell to say that, yeah, we got problems with police, and we got problems with education, and we got problems with police, and we got problems with those kinds of things. But the reality is the most intimate problem you have is a problem that you have with your environment and what you're breathing and what you're doing recreationally. There is a loop between nature, recreation, and health, right? And so we've got to get those communities to take responsibility for this. Now, I'm not saying that government does not have the responsibility to do this. I'm saying that government has not known how to take the responsibility to do this. But I think under the leadership of the work you guys are doing there, I think you can have a tremendous impact on that entire community, because what you're doing shows your compassion and how much you care for the people who live in those communities. And I think then it will inspire those people in those communities to get involved. So I just want to congratulate and salute UDC on all the creative and innovative things they're doing, because I think you're on the right track.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fern. Dr. Jones, any final remark?
I reiterate what Dr. Fern says. Thank you all for participating, and I believe UDC is on the right track. We have a vision, we have direction, and we're looking for resources now to ensure that we can align vision with the direction. And so thank you all for participating. I've learned a lot from the panel. Thank you for hosting, Cameron.
Sure. So Mr. Holmes, any final remark? If you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
Thank you. Had to take it off, double mute. All right. So yes. No, thank you again for having us, inviting me to the panel. It's definitely great to hear that, we have all these different things are going on, especially what's going on right now. In terms of the future, I hope that, we can have more discussions like this, because I think they're very relevant to keep the conversation going in terms of some of the developments that we want to occur on the East End.
Okay, thank you. So Brenda, any final remark? If you are speaking, you are muted.
Yeah, so, I just want to thank everybody, for this opportunity. I'm so happy to represent UDC and the DOEE Green Fellows team, also thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to be here, and I just want to tell everybody, to be politically active in your communities, engage in important conversations, I do this because I believe that in order to create change, people should be given the opportunities and resources to advocate for themselves and their communities. So I'm gonna continue to reach out to the community, and I encourage everybody, to do the same. And if there are any students, UDC and the DOEE have great opportunities that, have allowed me to be here today. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So Ms. Crawford, any final remark?
I just want to thank you so much for having this and for giving us an opportunity to celebrate Earth Day with UDC on this very, very important topic. I want to invite everyone to visit our website, to sign up for one of our newsletters, to stay engaged in all the activities that go on at DOEE. You will not be remiss to know that there are activities, opportunities for engagement, stakeholders meetings where we invite the community to engage with us and to learn from the great work that we're doing at DOEE. We have a team of the most incredible, amazing, passionate staff of subject matter experts, scientists, biologists, engineers, working to protect the environment in the District of Columbia. And we are your first stop for information about how we're doing our work, what the regulations are, and how you can be involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me thank you on behalf of our team for your time and great insight and comments. I really thank you, Dr. Fern, so Ms. Crawford, Ms. Prez, so Mr. Holmes, and Dr. Jones for your participation. So we have a long list of questions from our audience. So what I would like to say that I will share the questions that you have here. There are some questions, some comments, and with our panelists. And as soon as we receive the responses, we share the responses to our UDC website, and hopefully you can get the answers that you're looking for. But let me thank you for your following.
Cameron, President Mason would like to say something.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
No worries. President Mason, we'll turn it over to you.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I thought it was a great panel. I want to thank Causes and the panelists for rising to the occasion. If you haven't seen the Daily Inspiration on my UDC, you should check it out because I think it's very appropriate to this day being Earth Day. Just thank you all very much, and you just did a great job. Let me thank Patrick too for helping to pull it together. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this, we are going to follow the Director Wells, the Director of DOE, closing remark. Jay, please play the video.
Well, happy Earth Day, everyone. This is probably one of the most unusual Earth Days you'll ever experience in your lifetime. But I'm very glad that we are taking a moment to recognize Earth Day, and it's the 50th anniversary. Having the 50th anniversary of Earth Day is remarkable. It could never be more important. And I appreciate the focus that you have today in talking about equity and environmental justice and simple fairness. We definitely see with this virus, COVID-19, that very often things that are presumed to be experienced by the whole planet is disproportionately experienced by those that have the least resources or have had a history of injustice and lack of equity. And we see that right now with the pandemic. But as we relate to Earth Day, let me say that I'm very proud of everyone that's been participating in this and taking the time out. There's many other things, that's on people's minds right now. And so special thank you to Ron Mason, president of UDC. One of my favorite leaders in Washington, D.C. Ron has done an amazing job at UDC, and he's the education leader for our city. Thank you very much, Ron. And of course, Dwayne Jones, who our current head of causes. Dwayne brings a lot of passion, but certainly a lot of skills to helping us think through what's the role of our university at the District of Columbia, a land-grant college, in promoting the values and policies and projects that are important to us. And I believe it was Michael Fear who joined us, and from North Carolina State. Thank you very much for joining us. and I'm sorry, Mickey Fern. So Mickey Fern from North Carolina joined us, and thank you very much for participating in your nation's capital in one of the greatest cities in the world. And of course, Brenda Perez. Brenda is a Green Fellow at my agency, and she is a student, of course, at UDC, but someone who really is a future leader in working in the areas that are important to me and important to our city. And of course, Kelly Crawford. Kelly is one of our leaders at DOEE, and Kelly's doing a great job and very proud of her work as well. So here on the 50th anniversary, some of the things to look back about what we've accomplished. In Washington, D.C., when I was on the city council, 10 years ago, I passed a bill, the bag bill, the single-use disposable plastic bag fee that says you have to pay nickel whether you get a bag in order to get a bag. Now it applies to paper bags as well. Didn't want to have the argument of which is worse, paper or plastic, but we certainly knew that plastic bags are a problem in the Anacostia River, and it had a disproportionate impact on the trash that we have in the river. So it's been 10 years. We're proud of that bill, and the reduction of plastic bags we find in the environment in the river now is plummeted by almost 70%. We also have a ban on styrofoam now. That was the other problem that we had in the river and in our waterways. We've got a lot more to do. I mean, we certainly need to address more around plastics. We have more to do around disposable containers, plastic containers that, water bottles, soda bottles, that sort of thing. That's really the next step of what we're going to need to do as a country to get this trash out of our waterways and out of our oceans as well. And then one of the things I'm most proud of is that the Anacostia River, DC is situated on two rivers, and people often think of the Potomac River. And the Anacostia River has always been thought of secondarily. Well, that's true in our cleanup policies as well. Potomac River's had substantial cleanup, substantial efforts dating back to Lyndon Johnson to reclaim that river, but the Anacostia River was left behind. And so under Mayor Bowser and through the efforts of our government, we have done a tremendous amount to clean up the Anacostia River. Anacostia River is known as not only just the forgotten river, but sometimes has been a symbol for environmental injustice, lack of equity, and because lower income residents have often bordered along that river and have suffered disproportionately from having a river that's not a contributing asset to the neighborhoods where rivers should be, ought to be, and will be. Anacostia River has quickly become a contributing asset. We hope that you'll be able to swim in the Anacostia River and fish and eat the fish that you catch off the river in 2025. That's just a short 5 years from now. And that's going to be Earth Day that I'm definitely going to celebrate. And if it's warm enough, I'll go swimming. So that's a lot of what we've done to accomplish, and now we have to look forward. One of the greatest challenges we have, and one of the greatest challenges we're going to need you and your leadership, your careers, to help us really fix, restore, is our planet with climate change. Climate change is the greatest existential threat to our planet right now. We use more resources than the planet produces every year. We're using fossil fuels. We're creating a greenhouse effect that warms the surface of the earth. That again, with the flooding, extreme heat, has a disproportionate effect on lower income people with less resources, people across the planet that do not have the resources to either move or protect themselves from the deleterious effects of climate change. So the mayor, under the leadership of Mayor Muriel Bowser, she has set a goal that by 2032, that's just a few years from now, 2032, that we'll cut the usage of carbon fossil fuels that the city uses in half, by 50%. And then by 2050, our city will be carbon neutral. We've taken a pledge with cities all across the world. Regardless of what the federal government does, our cities can be responsible. Our cities can step up and meet the goals from the Paris Agreement. And we will, and the mayor's made that commitment to do it. So we will be, and we're on track to be carbon neutral by 2050. So your nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the first LEED Platinum city in the world. We're doing our part. We're leading the nation. We're trying to contribute to help other cities across the globe, other countries, but also to be responsible and accountable for who we are as a civilization. So we've got work to do. We've made progress. Earth Day is the day that we not only celebrate the earth, we celebrate our progress, and we put down the marker of what we have to do next.
Okay, so thank you, Director Wells, and thank you, President Mason. So with this, I hope that you had a great time throughout the event. Let me thank our UDC team, in particular IT, Jay and Kia from our IT team, so our causes team, Dr. Jones, Catherine Morris, Dr. Dexisa, and our great judges who reviewed our posters. So from our DOE team, so entirely they really work tirelessly with us, and in particular our followers. So I hope that you had a great time, and thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye.
Also, this meeting is recorded and will be available on the website.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you.